Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, I think we're good. It's 10 past. You want to go ahead and start?
Sure.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I think most of you were here last night. It was an
Hi,
incredible
thank
talk and reading that CA gave for us. Today's the workshop, of course. So CAConrad has some terrific books. They are over here for sale. There's 3 of them over there for sale from the PSC bookstore. If you get a chance to buy them, that would be great. Get them signed. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this. Those are really interesting notes. You don't see those in typical classes, right? So anyway, welcome, CAConrad.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely to see you. So, you know, there might be a few more people. They said they were coming, so I might cover this first section later.
Okay. Yeah,
Because if they don't hear that, they're not going to know what we're doing.
Yeah, oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Well, I'd have to say all that part. I just, you know, it wouldn't work for them. So let's just. Were you all here last night? Okay.
But for the record, I'll be taking notes on my phone. I'm not texting anyone, just so you know.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That's nice of you. So you heard me talk about why I started using these rituals because of the factory workers I was raised by. You know, all that. That's why I started doing that. Okay. You can all hear me just fine? Yeah. So I told you about the first one that I did, which is eating the red food a day, wearing the red. Those 7 poems, the color poems, where we'd eat the color and wear the color, they're in the beautiful marsupial afternoon. But they're not in chronological order because, you know, I don't care about that. But I just wanted to say, wait, let me shut the Wi-Fi off because it's trying to get me to do things I don't want to do. I just wanted to say that I believe that this is true. I forgot to take my mushroom brain pills. They're not psychedelic. I'm just going to take them so they can, like, in about 15 minutes, I'll be a lot different. They're very good. They have a lot of it. Yeah, they have a lot of lion's mane and reishi, you know. Okay, anyway. I believe this for a fact that almost every poet I've ever known, like more than 95% probably, stopped writing. As I said last night, you know, I started writing in 1975. My first book didn't come out until 2006. It's really long, you know, time for all that. But it's just because I love poetry. I didn't stop writing because I didn't have a book or win an award, you know what I mean? That has to be the only focus. If your focus is these things that you get, you're going to have a hard time. So when I started writing all those years ago, it was before the internet, and meaning you had to go to the post office to submit poems, and you had to type them up yourself because there wasn't photocopiers, and you know, well, they weren't where I lived, you know. And I used these things called onion skin paper, you know. Anyway, it was a messy situation. But she would send them with a cover letter. There was all this requirement and stamps and waiting, you know. But the thing is, that was the time period where these editors, because they had to take the time to send them, you had to send a self-addressed stamped envelope or you would never see it again or hear from them. They took their time destroying you in their correspondence. They loved it. They reveled in it. And the way that I dealt with it was I had a cork board over my desk. I'd write in big red magic marker like, fuck you, and then stab it with a pin up on the cork board. It's necessary. It's really necessary. Because people who try to tear you down for your creativity do not deserve your time, ever. Somebody does that to you, just don't ever speak to them again. That's my rule. And there's lots of them. You'll have a whole long list. It'll keep growing for years. But you have to protect this because there's just that nastiness out there, especially among poets, because it's like I said yesterday, we're the ugly cousins of the art world. And because of that, the resources are really limited, and everybody acts like maniacs for no reason. And I believe that these are the reasons why almost every poet exits. I mean, gone. I had a friend who, when I interviewed Eileen Miles years ago, I said, tell me a poet who I should know about but is very obscure. And without hesitation, she said, oh, Susie Timmons, Locked from the Outside. They were in this punk band together in the 70s or something. And it was this book called Locked from the Outside, and I started corresponding with Susie. And the thing is, Susie won an award, the Ted Berrigan Award. It was the first one for her book called Locked from the Outside. Absolutely brilliant book. But all these dudes, this is the 70s, right? Or whatever year, maybe it was 1990 at this point. But all these men just assumed that they were going to win. And when they did, she was treated so horribly that she actually never went to readings anymore or shared her work. But she kept writing, which is good. And then she left New York City. She just had enough of this violence from these dudes. Anyway, who cares about that? My point is, you just got to protect it. I had so when I teach like a series of workshops, like I'm doing right now, teaching first semester, for the first 5 minutes of every workshop, I have a list we go through it, like I call it intrusions. There are so many intrusions. These intrusions are things that really will destroy you if you're not, and there's things within ourselves too. It's not just these other people out there who are feeling badly about, I don't know, they're taking it out on you because they feel bad. There's no excuse for it. I'm just saying, there's always a reason somebody's an asshole. But my point is, the intrusions are vast. And some of that is what this is about in the first place. I think I told you yesterday that my major intrusion I didn't know about was this idea that I had no concept of the present, because I was raised by people who worked at factories where they had to shut the present off to survive those jobs. And I learned that technique. So that's an intrusion. But the thing is, we learn editing skills from the moment we're born almost. We start editing, like, how do you get the milk out of the bread? Like, all these things that you need. You're editing with your parents as best you can. This sort of conversation becomes an internal editor gets formed. And then you learn syntax and, all these words you learn. The reason I bring this up is because I am just going to start with the front of this now, because it's, I think it'll be safe. You see, I say up there, taking the notes, how to take the notes. So let me cover this first. Oh, wait, let me tell you about this one student. This is important. So I teach every year at this school called Naropa, and run by Ann Waldman. It used to be run by Ann Waldman and Allen Ginsberg originally. And about a decade ago, I had this brilliant student named Elizabeth Sawecki. She's given me permission to use her name. So this is in early June. And then she graduates. And then I see her about half a year later. I'm back in Boulder, Colorado for something else I'm doing at another college. Anyway, she comes to the event. And I say, thank you for coming. How's your writing going? She's like, I haven't written since your workshop. And I said, what? Are you kidding me? Did you not remember anything we talked about? I was like, this is exactly what happens to you. And then she burst into tears, sobbing. I mean, like hyperventilating. She said, you don't understand. It's the most important thing in my life, but I can't write. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't write. I was like, oh my God. All right, so after the event, I said, look, come with me. We went to this much fabled Innisfree thing, this poetry coffee shop. Did you know that place, Innisfree? No. COVID killed it, but it was a poetry-only bookstore in Boulder that was also a coffee shop. It was really great. Named after, like the mythical Innisfree. Anyway, I said, what happened to you? This is what happened to her. In order to pay her stupid student loans, she had to get a job, and she got a job in a medical office doing billing. I know we all need to work. I mean, I worked a million stupid jobs, but I think it's a really bad idea for a planet, the way we have it's stupid, the way we operate. It's ridiculous. There's got to be a better system than going to work. We're going to drop dead one day. There's absolutely no denying it. We're all going to drop dead sooner than we think, probably. So it's like, you know, why waste time with all this bullshit? So I get people to write wherever they say they cannot write. If I can get you to write where you say you can't write, you're free. Forever. So she took a job in a medical office doing billing because it paid well. The jobs that pay well tend to destroy you fastest in capitalism. So I said, well, okay, well, tell me what that means. What does this entail? She says, you know, it's all this. She had to memorize numbers, codes, which are a mixture of numbers and letters. So here's the thing. Before I finish what I asked her to do, I'm going to tell you about this piece of research on the brain. Because I like to go to Barnes & Noble. I mentioned that yesterday and don't buy any books in there, you know, steal them or whatever, but don't buy their books. But go to the marketing section and look at the marketing research books. But the magazines are the other thing I like. The medical journals especially. Unfortunately, a lot of these science magazines are now, it's all interview about drones, and they interview the nerds, making them who are very excited, they're crazy and out of their minds. And you know, like some like, I don't know, officer in the army or whatever is being interviewed, and he's always very stiff and like, yes, we're going to do, you know, all these things we can do now. When I was a kid, these magazines used to focus on things about ozone layer and protecting wild animals, and now it's all about military-industrial complex. Every issue. But anyway, there was some research on the brain that the military, of course, funded, which is very disturbing. Also, it's plugged into the whole AI thing, this research. Okay, so here's the thing. There was this piece of research on the brain on, well, there's two pieces that I wanted to talk about if we have enough time, but the one that I want to talk about that involves the notes, you know, or where it happened with Elizabeth Sawecki. So they did this research. It was a case study with violinists who play violin in orchestras professionally. And they did brain scans on these people, and they found a horseshoe-shaped configuration on the surface of their brains. And that's the first time in history that we have physical evidence of the results of practice makes perfect. You see, you've heard the term muscle memory. I think it's a nice term, but it's actually not a muscle at all. It's more a computer file. So we have thousands, probably tens of thousands of these files. To learn to tie your shoe, you build a file, right? To learn to play the violin, because I know nothing about playing violin. So, you know, you look it up and Google says, you know, it's the most difficult thing to master. And others will disagree with that, but that's all right. There's a lot that you go through to learn the violin. You use both sides of your brain. They were talking about. So the brain gets exhausted learning this thing. So it just encapsulates all of it in this file. Like, oh, these are the things you keep wanting me to do. Here, just put them here. Stop asking me, basically. That's what practice makes perfect is. So whatever that file is for a poet, I'm sure it's different for each poet, because each, you know, the violin is a specific tool that you learn, right? That's why they could do the study on them. With poets, it wouldn't work. But whatever that file looked like for Elizabeth, she couldn't access it anymore because of this job. This job was just ruining her. She could not find her way to that very amazing place she had been building inside of her. So I want to tell you, it's very easy to have that happen to you, especially in this violent culture we live in about how we have to work and survive. But I'm also here to tell you that it's extremely easy to get back. This is what I asked her to do. I said, so do you have access to a computer? She's like, I'm at the computer all day long. That's what I do for like 9 hours, just sitting there. Bullshit. You know, I said, oh, that's a nightmare. I said, okay, but here's the thing. Does it have Word on it? She's like, yes. Open a Word document. I said, I want you to... Does everybody in here know how to Did you learn how to type, like to put your fingers on the keys and type? Good. Because it's a skill that's not being taught anymore, and I think it's a really important skill. If you don't know how to type, I'll adjust it for those who actually don't know how to type, because I ask people to type with their eyes closed, so you kind of have to know the keys to do that. If you can't, that's fine. The other thing that's not being I just did a public workshop recently where there were a few people who were like 16, 17-year-olds, and none of those young people were taught cursive. Were you all taught cursive? Good. That's not being taught anymore for a couple of decades now or whatever. And I feel like that's a nightmare. That's such an important... And when I write up on the board for them, I said, do you understand this? They're like, I don't know how to read that. Like it's like another language to them, cursive. They can't read cursive because they weren't taught it. It looks like hieroglyphs to them. I was like, oh, God, that's a problem because I want you to give speed to the writing, to get ahead of the editor, and it's really hard to print quickly. So I give those students their phones, like type on your phone because you can do that quickly. Whatever I can do to get around all these problems. Anyway, I said, I want you to open up a Word document, and 3 times an hour, I would like you to please type with your feet flat to ground yourself. Position your fingers on the keys. Turn the screen light all the way off so you can't see typos. And then type as fast as you can for 5 minutes, just like we told you in workshop. As soon as your mind follows a thread, this is important to remember for these rituals. If your mind follows a thread or a sentence, faster, because that's the editor at work. That editor is invaluable, very, very, very important to us when we're actually like putting the poems together. But these editors get in the way of the raw language. There's this magical language inside of us waiting on the other side of that wall that they've built. So I'm just asking you for the speed to get around that wall. I said 3 times an hour, and just pick up where you left off, just one. I said the more it looks like nonsense, the better it's going to be. At the end of the week, you're going to print out this long, bizarre document of nonsense and carry it around with a highlighter pen and find the things you like, cull that, shape it, and that's all she needed. When she was able to do that, she got right back into her file and has been writing again ever since. But that's how easy it is to get back into it, but it feels absolutely hopeless and draining because it's depressing. We need to treat our creativity like vital organs of our body. And we need to take care of them and not ignore them. Every single human being on this planet is creative. Everybody. There's not a human being who's not. So this whole idea of art and, who's special, whatever, that's just the commodification of, it's just capitalism. If you look at the earliest pieces of artwork on this planet that go back tens of thousands of years, statues of goddesses, things like that, there are no signatures on these things. And I believe it's because they believed that everybody was creative. They understood it. They knew it. In Bali, I've never been to Bali, but I have friends who are Balinese. The Balinese do not have a word in their vocabulary that is akin to artist. They don't segregate artists out of the general population because they assume everybody. And the thing is, every photograph my friend showed me, everything's just incredibly beautiful. Everybody's creative there. That's why everybody's making everything beautiful. They don't seem to have a lot of these kind of straight line, intense buildings that we have in the States. Anyway. I was happy that she was able to get writing again, but it's very important to remember how easy it is to get lost. Now, okay, so the speed of the writing, that's all understood now. Now, you see what I say up there about mind loops? Do you know what mind loops are? Do you ever write something and then you can't get out of a thought and you're just sort of running around with it? That's the problem. That's another kind of intrusion. We've got concerns. These are 3, and after this I'm going to tell you this whole other thing about why I believe depression and writing is incorrect. It's an incorrect thinking that we have been fed in our culture and the art world. But okay, so these are the 3 tips. These are things I've been using for years. I still, of course, to this day, will get mind loops depending on what's going on in my life. The first one is, okay, so have you ever been where there's, like, they sell perfume or there's a wine tasting and they ask you to smell coffee beans between whatever you're doing? They do that to recalibrate your olfactory. It goes down to 3%. What's interesting is if you smell your own body, it goes down to 0. And they ask you to smell this, whatever this is. I don't know, the crook of your, I don't know, what do you call it? The other side of your elbow, whatever you call that. You smell that, apparently. It doesn't, I don't know. I just prefer smelling the coffee. I don't like drinking coffee, but I love the smell of it. But it works generally. It goes into there and it just does this magical thing up in here and it's gone, the mind loop. Sometimes that's not helpful, though. Sometimes you need something a little stronger. So the second one is to stare ahead at a stationary object and then flick the tip of your nose. And if you do it now with me, you'll see that it disrupts the cartilage and your visual pattern. So you've got touch, olfactory, and visual. 3 things. That will do it. But if it's a pernicious mind loop that won't let you go, then the thing that I suggest you do is thrash dancing, because thrash dancing moves that psoas muscle. You know the psoas muscle? It connects your knee, and it goes up. Do you ever have your knees shake because you're nervous? That's the psoas muscle. Are you familiar with TRE? Trauma release exercise? Do you want me to tell you about that a little bit? I hope we can get through these 13. We can do it. Okay, I'll just do it. I'm just going to tell you. Gosh, I don't remember this man's name. If you Google it, don't put in TRE. There's some computer program that dominates Google page 1 or whatever. All these nerds talking about computers. Okay, but TRE, trauma release exercise. This man, who I don't remember his name, for some reason, all of a sudden, he was in Alaska. I don't know why he was there either. He was hanging out with these park rangers. Another thing, I don't know why he was doing that. They were shooting polar bears with tranquilizing darts because, they're starving to death. Their ribs are showing. They're starving. They can't get out to kill seals anymore. And they're eating in dumpsters and attacking people and trying to eat people and their pets. So they put them in helicopters and send them out to the tundra to die out there, I'm assuming, because there's nothing for them to eat out there. But he noticed that when they were on their side, they were twitching, their hindquarters in particular. He said, why are they doing that? He said, we actually don't know why they're doing that, because this is not a muscle spasm-inducing serum. He then went to a wildlife rehabilitation center, like a squirrel with a cast on its arm, you know what I mean? They got hit by a car. And turns out every creature on this planet does that when they've been traumatized. The psoas muscle starts at the knee. Well, I guess you could say go the other way too. But anyway, I'm going to say it starts at the knee and goes up the thigh. And at the mylar shield, like the base of your spine, it braids together those 2 psoas muscles. It's designed to contract our bodies when we're in danger. That's its job. That's the shaking knees. The other animals know to release it when they're out of harm's way, and it gets out of them. But human beings have reason, which means we have the ability to invent denial. This is not happening, this is not happening, this is not happening, when it most certainly is happening. So we don't shake it out, and it stays in there. And there's a lot of belief in this system of TRE that is the location of PTSD. He's been working with the military in the United States who, traumatized military personnel. He's gone to Iraq and Afghanistan to work with not just soldiers, but also the victims of our wars, people who are traumatized, and it's working. I have a student right now in Massachusetts who's been trying it because he's been having a lot of difficulty. It's changing his life. Anyway, you'll see the videos. You know, put your butt against the wall and you bend your legs, and it stresses the muscle. It hurts. It really hurts. You're supposed to be there for 5 minutes. I don't know if you can do it for 5 minutes. Then you lie on your back and bend your legs, and they just start twitching on their own, and you start screaming and crying involuntarily. But you feel better. It's very different than sitting in a room and talking to a therapist. I'm not saying don't do that. Maybe do both. And then when you feel better, just tell the therapist that it's working, that, you know, thank you to them, you know, even though it might not be them. Okay, TRE. Oh gosh, I just derailed myself. There was, like, do you want to hear about TRE? There was a reason I didn't, because what's that?
Thrash dancing.
Thrash dancing, thank you. Thank you very much. Because I don't have TRE in my notes I'm looking at. So, thrash dancing, yeah, that's that psoas muscle, because all trauma is, when you get triggered through trauma, and a mind loop is kind of even a small triggering of it, that's that muscle. So if you can really dance hard and kick the legs in the air, that'll really work it out. Okay. So what I suggest is to use paper that is lined. I use lined paper and then disrespect those lines. Anything I can get you to disrespect the structures that we're bound to, that we're corralled into, the better. So I want you to write like a child, and as fast as you can on that paper when you're inside the ritual. The key to getting that magical language out of you that's just waiting to come out is the speed of the writing. To get ahead of the editor, to get ahead of those mind loops, and find your cruising speed in that. Once you hit it, you just keep writing and writing. 5 minutes, believe it or not, is a lot of material when you're writing like that. It sounds like automatic writing, and that's what some people think it is actually, I guess I understand what that means, but this is completely different. Remember yesterday I was talking about when I did that first somatic poetry ritual with the red wig, how I learned 2 things at the end of that first day. The first being that it worked. The ritual anchored me in the present. And the second was that I would have never written that poem at any other time for any other reason, because the ritual orchestrates the language. And you know, I teach also every year, for about 15 years, I've been teaching in Amsterdam at an art school called Sandburg. There are no poets there. They don't want to hear from me. They're annoyed that they're required to see me. And but about half hour into it, they understand why. They're just told you don't, if you miss this class, you're going to have to take it next year when he's back, or they're back. So they come, and it's supposed to be their first year, the incoming graduate students. These rituals work with every genre, every discipline. Anybody can use them for anything. I've worked with musicians. A lot of dancers have come to the workshops. Anyway, so let me see. Do you want me to start talking about some of these? Okay, I want us to begin with the refrigerator. I want you to really think about that box as, you know, it houses your body before it becomes your body. You know, so that's literally what it is. You're in that refrigerator before you're you know. And I want you to have a relationship with the refrigerator. So here's the way you would do it. You would write for about 5 minutes in your notebook before you enter the ritual. And then I want you to begin, and each time you approach the refrigerator, change it a little bit. Like maybe I want you to look on top of it. Do you all have binoculars? Binoculars? Good. Binoculars are really good. Get far away from it and study it with binoculars, then work your way toward it. Get a magnifying glass and study it closer. I have a digital microscope I use in workshops, but you can download a digital microscope on your phone now. There's an app for it. Look at your refrigerator very closely, starting with the outside. Don't even go inside yet. And then I want you to look at the model of your refrigerator. Oh, and while you're doing that, you stop and you're writing. It's just you're becoming associated with this machine in a new way. The machine is an extension of you. Then I want you to go online and go to the company that makes your refrigerator, because every one of these companies shows you the internal organs of these machines, the compressor or whatever, all these different things. I don't even know what it all is. But it looks like organs, lungs, all kinds of things. And I want you to print that out and put it on your refrigerator. It's like an X-ray. I want you to really study these innards of this thing, because you're going to be putting the food that's in there into your innards, and it's going to be broken apart and go into different organs and processed in different ways. The sugars, the proteins, all these things. And then when you get inside the refrigerator eventually, try. I think it's good to use different senses when you're in there. Like maybe go in there with a clothespin on your nose, because the nose wants to be in the refrigerator a lot. They like it. The nose likes the refrigerator. But if you keep the nose from being in there, then you're relying on your eyes. And you're breathing through your mouth, so you're going to taste it. Or you could hold your breath while you're in there for a little bit, I suppose. But the idea is to get your senses involved with what's in there, everything that's inside of there. The next time you go in, do it with sunglasses on. And maybe have Vaseline or some kind of oil on one of the lenses so it distorts your visual pattern. And look back and forth between the lenses like this. It's really interesting when you start messing around with like your senses in that way. What comes through you? Try it standing on one foot. I know that sounds weird, but the reason I'm asking you to do that is when you start doing something on one foot, your entire being is now set to figure out, okay, how am I going to not fall over? So that's now part of the conversation you're having with yourself while you're dealing with your refrigerator. It all becomes part of the notes. So I think I mentioned yesterday that my book, The Book of Frank, was originally going to be published by Jonathan Williams. He was the last living Black Mountain College poet. And I used to go down to North Carolina to work with him on this manuscript. And then he passed away, and then Wave Books picked the book up. But he was Charles Olson, you know this poet Charles Olson, modernist? So he was like their main instructor at Black Mountain. 7 feet tall, really deep voice, very imposing. Hey. And I would ask multiple questions about Olson, and he didn't want to talk about Olson. And finally one day he was really annoyed and just said, all right, I'll tell you something. One day we were at Black Mountain in the college. You know, it looks like a spaceship in the middle of the woods. And this art school. It's still there, but, you know, there's a plaque on the highway, one of those federal plaques saying, this is Black Mountain College, and it was very important and blah, blah, blah. But it's now owned by these born-again Christians, and they don't like us being on there looking for this place. So my friends and I decided to pretend we spoke another language that we don't. And then they were just like, well, you know, we were like, and they would just walk past them. They're like, oh, they were like following us around. But we wanted to see the building, for crying out loud, you know. We weren't there to desecrate whatever you thought we were. I don't know what they thought we were doing. We just looked too weird for them. So anyway, we found the school, and it was beautiful to see the school that I've been hearing about all these years. And there's like a pond. And so I got to see visually for the first time what Jonathan was telling me. So Olson was playing Dvorak as loud as he could in the room. Then he threw the door open, and he said, now you all leave. He said he made them run out and jump out like they was like jumping out of an airplane with a parachute. And you go over to that field where those daisies are growing. And he says, as Jonathan was going, he's like, the daisies and the sunshine will be part of your poem. He didn't mean that you were going to write about sunshine and daisies, but it was experiential. It's part of it. And I feel like this is very much like this. This is all experiential writing. Because this is not expository. I'm not asking you to write about your refrigerator. In fact, when you're taking the notes, like I said earlier, when you write those notes, you're writing as fast as you can. You're not thinking about the refrigerator. You're allowing yourself to be there, taking in all of this. How's that? Does that make sense? Oh, number 2. Is that my phone?
No, that was mine.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Fruit and veg infusion. Okay. So we are about, well, the surface of the planet is only 27% land. We forget that because we're land creatures, so we just think that's the world. It's not. It's mostly not. Almost entirely not. Do you all know Dr. Sylvia Earle? She's one of my heroes. She's the first woman aquanaut. She took a bathysphere full of women scientists down to the deep sea. I've seen her talk several times in person, the Academy of Natural Sciences, places like that. Amazing human being. She's the one who got Google to do Google Oceans. She was like, what is the Google Earth? Who cares about Google Earth? She's like, most of the planet is not Earth. You know, and they did it. The Mariana Trenches now, like all that's on there because of her. She and her children spend their lives going around the ocean picking up these trawler nets that are broken and just killing everything. And they have an island that they gather them on, and it's just like this massive pile. But she does things like that. Oh, I bring her up because, she talks about, most of the planet's mostly is... Okay, you want me to tell you the last time I saw her, this has nothing to do with the ritual, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The first sentence out of her mouth at the podium was, and she repeated it, because we were all like, what? She says, bioluminescence is the most common form of communication on planet Earth. We were like, what? And then she started showing us on this giant movie. The National Geographic Society brought her. There's this big, she's got all these books you would just love. They're incredible. The Blue Planet books, things like that. She has this movie screen behind her, massive movie screen, and she starts showing us images of all these weird creatures that have not even been studied yet, that create their own light. Anyway, I like that. Bioluminescence is the most common form of communication on planet Earth.
What's her name again?
Dr. Sylvia Earle. Earl, like a Duke or Earl, Only she's way cooler. 27 is a number that I'm obsessed with. 27% of our body is not water. 27% of the Earth's surface is Earth. The moon is on a 27-day cycle. I did a ritual where my boyfriend cut me with his Bowie knife. I had to really talk him into it. But because I wanted to study the 27 days it takes for the human cells to proliferate and knit together again. We are living at 27. We are 27. I don't know if you need to hear this. I hope this isn't going to annoy anybody, but the male ejaculate travels 27 miles an hour. It's very strange. 27, it goes on and on and on. And the Kabbalah, there are 27 channels to God. In Hinduism, 27 is given a philosophical name. And this name is said that it's joy giver. The 27 is the number that gives you joy. Yeah, 27, it's endless. Anyway, it has nothing to do with this ritual though. So we're mostly water is my point as human beings. And our bodies are microcosms of that planet, completely. So, since we're so much water that we're almost drowning, the fact of the matter is, nothing on this planet absorbs sound like water. Nothing. Remember yesterday when I was talking about the ritual that I did with the extinct animal sounds? And I would flood my body starting at my feet? It's because I was not privileging the ears. our entire bodies hear music. They absorb it. Every cell. So, fruits and vegetables are 95% water. They're closer to drowning than we will ever be, I hope. Here's what I do. Okay, you want me to tell you the first time I did this? I was in Marfa, Texas. This is an example for you all so you can see what you want to do. And I was in Marfa, Texas on a residency from the Lannan Foundation, and for 2 months. I was very excited because I've been wanting to do a ritual. This is in my book, While Standing in Line for Death. It's called Marfa Poetry Machine and 36 Rituals. I did 36 rituals a day for 36 days. It was exhausting, but I loved it. Before the sun rose till after it set, just all day long. And they were kind of annoyed because they were like, oh, but we wanted to have a dinner for you. I'm like, I don't have time to be socializing and dinner and, you know. Oh, but NPR, you know, they went to this NPR interview. I was like, maybe afterwards, you know. They were kind of like, oh, but everybody likes to do that. I'm like, I have to do this every day for 36 days or it's not going to work. That's why I'm here. They finally left me alone, which was great. And, but this is what I did every morning when I woke up. I'm vegan, so that means that all the food I'm eating can like stay out. It doesn't need to be refrigerated. I used a wooden bowl because wood is non-conductive. And I put all the food I was going to eat that day into this giant bowl. Then I put 2 speakers that were in this house that they gave me on either side of the bowl, and then covered the speakers in the bowl up with a wicker basket, and then put over that towels, sheets, pillows, comforters to seal it in, and then cranked this song all the way up. It was the same song each morning, Yoko Ono's song, Yes, I'm a Witch. Do you know this song? So she was, Paul McCartney, who's, you know, famously misogynistic and racist and stupid, hated her and called her a witch and a bitch in an interview. And in typical Yoko fashion, she's like, okay. And she wrote a song saying, yes, I'm a witch, I'm a bitch. I don't care what you say. Each time you don't say what you want to say, you're dying. I was talking about this in London, and I forgot where the hell I was, and people were really mad. They were like, she ruined the Beatles. You know, they're from the West. And I said, actually, sir, if you look at when John and Yoko met, that man was singing, I Want to Hold Your Hand. Yoko Ono is the Beatles. Let's just stop this conversation. I'm tired of this conversation about the Beatles. If it weren't for Yoko Ono, the Beatles, we wouldn't even know who they were, probably. You know, they would have had a couple hits. You're going to tell me that those men who wrote I Want to Hold Your Hand wrote I'm the Walrus? I don't think they did that without her. It's impossible. She was smarter than all 4 of them rolled in a carpet together, you know. Anyway, yeah, people were leaving. It was, you know, I was just like, well, look it up. I mean, anyway. So this song goes into the food, and then I would slowly eat that food. You're eating the song. The food is absorbing the music. So I would like you to consider infusing a piece of fruit or vegetable. My students do it all the time in Massachusetts right now. They get bunches of grapes and do the whole bunch of grapes, and they each eat a grape. They said, should we do seed or seedless? I said, no, you want seeds. And they said, why? And I said, I don't know. Just make it up. I said, no, eat without seeds. I don't care what you do. I said, but I would say just change it up all the time. Slowly chew that song while writing. Are there any questions so far? So let's back up before I go to the straight lines, go back to the note-taking. So where I'm, you know, this whole part of, I'm going to tell you about, actually somebody went to the restroom. I'll wait for her to come back to cover that. Straight lines in the home. I'm just remembering she went to the bathroom. And we do it in America all the time because it's cost effective. if America had their way, I'm convinced that chickens would be rectangles laying square eggs, because it'd be much easier to produce that. During COVID lockdown, we were surrounded by these lines, and they are violent. So the idea with the lines, I'm asking you to take a piece of paper, maybe in your notebook where you're writing your notes, take a blank page, and just, I'm not asking you to draw the room, I'm just asking you to put the lines that you're seeing like in the order, just all these lines. And then later that day, you'll use them, maybe before you go to sleep, where you'll draw the lines on your body. But then I want you to also consider, I don't know what word to use, prosthetic, I don't know. Like put lines over, in other words, draw twisted lines or something and sort of tape them to where these lines are in the room and see how you can live with that. See if it's different to have curved lines in the room. You know, sometimes people ask me after I'm done a reading, like, why my poems are shaped the way they are. If you look at my poems that I was writing prior to 2005, when I started using these rituals, almost all my poems were most exclusively on the left margin. Sort of a traditional spot. From the very first ritual with that red poem I talked about yesterday, wearing the red wig, you know, all that, I would try to write that, and if I would try to keep it on that margin, and I would literally, I mean it literally, that I was feeling ill, nauseous. I thought, am I getting sick? But when I would start to move them it was sort of intuitive. I started moving them. You remember I was saying yesterday about the spirits who speak to us to give us our poems? Well, this is similar. It's like they were saying, get off that margin, and we'll stop putting our ghost finger down your throat to make you throw up, you know? So, and as I would move them off that margin, I would feel better. And then I just surrendered to the whole thing and just allowed it to happen. And I have no idea what they're going to look like until it's all over. It's like putting ceramic in a kiln, you know, and seeing what's going to come out. No idea. It's always very exciting. So that's where all those shapes come from. Because the natural world is not a left margin. And they were like, they were basically, so I had this voice come to me when I was waking, and it said, we're trying to show you the way out of the violence of the line. You human beings have entirely too many straight lines. Another thing, you know the poems that I ended with yesterday, the ones with the squirrels and the chipmunks and the crows that I was working with? So the poem, I turned the book in, it's 72 poems. And I spent 3 years writing these poems, which sounds crazy, but that's just how much I love writing the poems. I just worked on those 72 poems for 3 years. Every day, working, you know. When I was finished, I realized I'd made a mistake. There were actually 73 poems. I was like, that is not happening. But I didn't want to put one of these aside for it because they were from this ritual. So I took one of those poems and I ripped it apart and fed it to the other poems. And then I handed the manuscript in when I was satisfied. That night, the night I handed in that manuscript, I had a dream that was visceral. Even thinking about it just is upsetting. I came home with groceries, and 6 of my poems were on the white duvet of my bed, having sex. I mean, like full, like really intense sodomy kind of thing, you know. I was like, oh my God, what are they doing? And they saw me and they started throwing letters at me, and they were sort of growling and hissing. They couldn't speak the words they were made out of, which was really weird. My first thought was, maybe I can teach them to speak the words they're made out of, you know? And the thing that was most terrifying is that one of them sort of galloped to the edge of the bed to aim at my face better, and it started I could feel it stinging my face, these letters. But anyway, the next morning when I woke up, I realized that those 6 poems were the 6 poems I fed those lines to. So either that poem was really angry and wanted to like have some kind of sodomy magic ritual to like reunite. I don't know what they were trying to do. But it was unpleasant. I didn't change it though. There's still 72 poems. We'll see what happens. Maybe when the book comes out, they'll like really get me back.
Do you, if I may ask you, do you write these out in first?
Oh yeah, like I know, like earlier when I was talking about, like I asked if you could write in cursive. It's really great if you can. If you can't write in cursive, everybody can write in cursive here? A little bit? Well then, if you can't, I would suggest typing on your phone because you're not going to be able to print fast enough to get ahead of the editor. At least I can't. So yeah, just type. But yeah, I prefer using the somatic, where you're using your body to make the letters. But the cursive is best, of course, because you don't lift your pen up. Sometimes I just won't lift my pen up at all. It's just like a string of words. Yeah.
Then when you type them up, like on Word?
Oh, I'm going to get to that at the end here. Yeah, that's to turn them into poems is a whole different process. Okay. Let's go to this next thing here, this next ritual, washing a dish. So you remember earlier I was talking about the files in our brain from that research on the human brain they did with the violinists, and they found the key to how they were able to play the violin, master it? Well, we have many of these files. The fact that you're able to listen to me and hear these words and decode them and understand what I'm talking about, it's files. What's interesting is if you hear sounds that are not words, like that, it goes to one part of your brain. But as soon as you hear a language spoken, even a language you don't know, it goes to a completely separate part of your brain to be decoded. This is important to know. I did a ritual. This is one of these rituals that I would never publish because I didn't like the poem. There are so many of them where I just don't like the outcome and I just, whatever, you just move on. Where I locked myself in my apartment, this is long before COVID, for 108 hours nonstop, which is 4.5 days. And I wanted to listen to one song on continuous repeat, the entire 108 hours. And I'm glad I read about this research on where language goes in the brain to be understood. Because if I had chosen a song with words, it would have driven me out of my mind, probably, because I'd be decoding it all the time. But I wanted human voices. Do you all know the jazz musician Donald Byrd? So he's got this amazing album from the 1970s where he wanted a different kind of album that's very spiritual, but there's no language in it. This song is called, you can get it on YouTube. Donald, B-Y-R-D is his last name. You have to hear this song. It's called Cristo Redentor, like Christ the Redeemer. But there's no words in it. And he has a gospel choir at the beginning, and they go through the whole song without a single word. They use their voices like a wave. And then his trumpet, because he's a trumpet player, his trumpet doesn't appear for almost 3 minutes. And he starts to pick up on their wave, and he starts playing with them. It's euphoric, the song. I play this often in workshops where we listen to it with our eyes closed, and then we listen to it again while writing. It's one of these songs that's really generative. I'm trying to remember why I brought Donald Byrd up. Anyway, okay, wash a dish, right, it's about these files. So we have a file about how we learn to wash dishes in our brains. Probably don't remember it. Maybe you do. I certainly don't remember who taught me to wash dishes, but somebody did. So I want you to go into the kitchen and get a clean dish out of wherever you keep your clean dishes. And I want you to wash it and rinse it and dry it and put it away again, and then go back into a separate room and sit down and begin writing immediately. I'm asking you to do that because that file will be opened up in your consciousness and floating around. You're not going to be writing about washing dishes, but that's going to be there. And maybe the person who taught you to wash dishes will kind of be in there a little bit. You may not remember them. But now that everybody's here again, I'm going to pause after washing. You got the washing the dish thing? Before I go into the shower thing, let's go over to the how to turn the notes into a poem. This involves another piece of research on the brain that I was fascinated by that this becomes very helpful with. So you're going to take your notebook. Your notebook's filled with these notes you've been taking to your computer. And you can open up a Word document. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Just raise your hand or whatever. Before you begin transferring the handwritten notes into the Word document, I would like you, remember I was asking earlier if you knew how to type? Have your feet flat to ground yourself. Open up a Word document, click on it to make sure that it's ready to be used. I've made that mistake. Because you shut the screen off and you think you're typing and then you turn on, there's no words. It's infuriating. Get ready to type. Position your fingers in the keys. Shut the screen light off. Close your eyes and type as fast as you can for 5 minutes. Same rules applies as I was saying earlier with the handwritten notes. As soon as your mind follows a full thread, sentence, faster. To get ahead of that editor. To get that raw, magical language out of you. Oh, I meant to say this. So you're going to look for the midway point of your notes. Suppose you've got 50 pages of handwritten notes. Go to page 25, earmark it, put a check or an X, check mark X, whatever you need to do to find the middle. So when that initial 5 minutes of speed typing with your eyes closed. Oh, if you don't know how to type, obviously look at your fingers, and type as fast as you can. Just try, it's going to be a little more difficult if you can't close your eyes because now your visual pattern is like soaking all your energy up. But you can do it. You can do it. I've tried it myself to see what it's like for people who don't know how to type, and I was able to do it. But I found it a little more challenging. I suggest everybody learn to write in cursive and type. Those are tools that are really helpful, I think. So you're going to pick up where you left off, wherever it is on the page with your speed typing, and begin transferring your handwritten notes from the beginning, and just keep filling all the single space. Just fill it up. When you get to that earmarked page that's halfway through, you stop, pause. Get back into position, screen light off, eyes closed. Another 5 minutes of speed typing with your eyes closed. And then put the screen light back on, begin transferring this last half of the notes. Then at the very end, another 5 minutes of speed typing with your eyes closed. Then print 2 copies out. Did you all get all that? Do you want me to repeat any of this?
You're good.
Okay. 2 copies. One of the copies you're going to hide from yourself for a month. And the other one you're going to begin carrying it around with a highlighter pen and finding the things you like. And then bringing those together in another document and start shaping. To me, that means removing things. One of the most valuable lessons I learned as a young poet, back in the early 1980s, is when I came upon this. My poems back then were verbose. I wrote too many words because I wanted to make sure, I was a real smart-ass teenager, you know, it's like, I want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what I mean, because this is a very important poem. You know how you are when you're a teenager? And, but soon enough I realized how impossible that was. Every single person in this room is unique. Everybody in this room is unique. The thing about us that makes us unique, well, there are many things physically or whatever we could say that make us unique, but the thing inside of us that makes us unique are our memories. All of the experiences we live through are gathering and building these lenses that we see the world through. Meaning, absolutely not going to happen that anybody's going to ever read that poem of mine and get it the way I meant it. Not going to happen. Exegesis is irrelevant. So that was very liberating. I was like, oh my God, now I can ignore the audience. And not to be, that's not rude. The opposite of rude, it means you trust the audience 100% to get what they get, when they get it, how they want to get it, if they're interested in getting it at all. Who cares? Don't write for an audience. Don't do it. You have to write in a bigger worldview way. Because there will be people who will love what you do. You have to love what you're writing. Don't write because you think a particular audience is going to appreciate it. That's a waste of your time and your talent. You know, you're always going to find somebody who's going to love what you're doing. You have to absolutely love what you're doing. You need an economy of poetry. At the beginning of this workshop, I said 95% or more poets quit writing is because they don't have a sense of how the longevity of being in love with this is and what it means. What I mean by an economy of poetry is like broadsides, chapbooks. You need to be communicating physically, like here's my poem, you know what I mean? You need to be doing that. You have to. The poets I know who continue writing are always the ones who publish little things and share them, you know? So the reason I ask you to do this speed typing is because of this piece of research on the brain. They've discovered, and this is also funded by the military, of course. What isn't at this point in this country? They've discovered how memories are formed. And this is okay. I'm going to use an example that I like to use just because everybody's has gone through this. You've stubbed your toe. Everybody has stubbed their toe. Stubbing your toe is an issue. It hurts. It's awful. Luckily, it'll go away soon, hopefully, unless it's really bad. But suppose I stub my toe really hard on this recycling can, not because I don't like recycling, but it just happens. And it makes an impact, and it creates a post in your brain. That's what they refer to it as, research as a post. And that post is like this microscopic bit of tissue that houses like where I was at, what time of year, all the information about where it's going on. It's in this memory, this post. Now, if I'm limping a couple hours later at the end of the line cafe or wherever I'm at, and everybody's like, what happened? You create a second post next to it because you're opening that post to tell them what happened, extract it, and then you put it over here. You create a new post. You create a new post because the brain considers talking about an experience a new experience because it is. Because the experience is fiction now. It's gone. It's past. It doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is the fact that you're talking about something that happened. Now, here's what's interesting. You talk about it again, you refer to the second post, not the first one. If you talk about it again, you refer to the third post. You always refer to the most recent post you made. That's where whitewashing of memory comes into. You know, this is all, the military loves this information. It's all about how to break people down. Tabula rasa, like wipe your slate clean so we can really get in there and manipulate you and make you who we want you to be. That's kind of what that's about, right? So the thing is about these notes and transferring them. So when you're transferring the handwritten notes, you're looking at the notes to do it, obviously. Well, you're reliving the ritual. You're opening up the file of where you were at when you were doing the ritual. So it's flooding your consciousness. So that first 5 minutes of speed typing is just emptying your cache, C-A-C-H-E, cache. But the second and the third in particular are just filled with your memories of being back in the ritual. Those bits of speed typing tend to really house the best of the notes sometimes for me. Does all that make sense, how to do that? It really is quite effective to do it this way. Oh, that second copy I asked you to hide for a month, dig it up a month later. There's something about living for a month, even a week. You think you haven't learned anything? You have. You're just incorporating things. You're experiencing things. Time is an editor. So if you look, but when you look at the notes the second time, the fresh batch of them that you hid, read them backwards. From the last word you type, read the whole thing backwards. Because you're going to find, I don't mean read the words backwards, I mean, right, you know what I mean. Read the whole word horde in reverse. How's that? Everybody has that about how to turn those notes into poems? Okay, we did the wash a dish. Now, I think the shower is next, right? Okay, so these three, the wash a dish, shower, and sheet, are sort of a set, these three. They're in your home. I believe if you can turn your home into a place where you can create in every room, in every space. Reposition yourself. Get up on a chair. Look at your home up high with binoculars. I did a ritual called a nude in a bucket, where I was standing naked in a bucket of water at the door, not outside the door, inside the door, looking out through the peephole. And I would have friends come by, and I wouldn't speak to them, but they would knock on the door and they would say, "Are you naked in there, your bucket?" Like that. But the idea is to spend all this time with this part. Like, who spends time at their door? But look at it with a magnifying glass. There's a cobweb or a crack in the paint you never notice. Like, if you're paying rent, you're paying for that too. Take up space in your apartment, I guess is what I mean. But you can, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things about our homes that we just take for granted. Right under your bed, right in a closet, right wherever you can, Okay. The shower. With the washing the dish, you're actually washing the dish and going through the whole motion, right? The shower, go into the bathroom, get naked, get into the shower. Do not turn the water on. You're not getting wet. But you're going to stand there and you're going to stare at your, whatever you've got, your loofah, whatever, your rubber ducky, your shampoos. Look at all of your things, your rags. They're wiping the filth off our bodies. And just stare at them and really take it all in. Something you would do. You just get in and you do what you're going to do, and then you get out and you get on with your day. But in this case, you're looking at all this, and then you're going to close your eyes and go through the process in your imagination. What do you wash first normally? What do you wash last? How were you trained to do this? Did your mother say clean to dirty? Like, don't start with your butt, start with your face. You know what I mean? Whatever you were taught as a kid. You know what I mean? How they teach you? I don't know. Then you step out of the shower and dry yourself off vigorously. I know you're not wet, but that doesn't matter. I want you to vigorously dry yourself off. Get dressed, go in another room, and sit down and write. That's going to be very weird. It's weirder than the washing the dish one. Washing dish one is a nice entryway into this. Does anybody have any questions?
When you say
Yeah.
go sit down and write, do you mean like do the screen off, typing as fast as you can type of writing? Or
Oh, I mean writing notes in your notebook.
writing notes in your notebook. The one, and that's where you're going still as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Now, for these three, you might want to try sitting in the same location to write each time. Just so that you like center yourself in this like idea of like, this is where I'm coming to write about this experience. The third in this, whatever this is, this triad, you get a clean sheet out of wherever your clean sheets are. And you're going to wear it like a cape and run around like a maniac screaming. Oh, there's one that I like to, I didn't put this on here, but there's one that I like to do with the sheet. You might want to consider this. Where you get a fan. Do you have a fan? You know, like a fan, you know, like a little.
Stand-up fan?
Yeah. Yeah, good. Get that. Have it down like so that it's facing this way at the edge of your bed so it's blowing up. And then get on your belly with your head over the bed with the fan hitting your face. And then elevate your feet with pillows and things so it looks so you're slanted. And you start screaming into the fan that you're, as though you're like falling to earth. It's all about like falling to earth. You know, screaming for gravity to be merciful or whatever. It never is. But that's a good thing to do with the sheet. But also run around like with a cape, a turban, whatever you want to do. Then fold it back up neatly and put it away and go sit down and write. So this is, the third one's a little different because you're not doing anything that you would normally do. But it's still an object that you normally use that you wouldn't use it this way. It's okay to move on to the next one? So the next one is the 9 objects, right? 9 objects. I should have made that number 9. 9 is, we were talking about the number 27 earlier. 27 is one of these 9 numbers. All of my books are based on 9s. 9 is indestructible. You know what I mean by that? Like if you multiply, any mathematicians don't know what to do with 9. Well, they know they can't do anything to 9. Anything you multiply into 9 comes back to 9. 2 times 9 is 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. 3 times 9 is 27, 2 plus 7 is 9. 36, 45, 54, it goes on and on and on. 108. Indestructible. Now, these numbers that we take for granted were created by magicians and ceremonial practitioners thousands of years ago. The bodies of the, not that also the letters we use too, but I'm not talking about them. The numbers that we use were shaped the way they are for a reason. 9 is an epiphany. The 9, if you draw a 9 like this, from the bottom up, the energy is going up the spinal cord and circulating in the crown chakra. That's 9. It's an awareness. It's like completion. It's like coming to terms. Building that bridge. Connecting what you think you need to finding out what you really need. That idea, 9. 9 objects. I want you to gather 9 objects. And I mean small things. You're going to put them in a hat or a box or whatever, some vessel, a bowl. Keys, a photograph torn from a magazine, all kinds of weird little objects that are unrelated that you would think, right? Put them in this thing. And then you find a place in your home where you can have the longest line. Like, where's the longest distance you can walk for some distance? And you look straight ahead with the bowl, and you begin tossing these things over your shoulder without looking back, just tossing them over your shoulder. So maybe over the one shoulder, the one, however you want to do it. Then when you've finished with that, you begin to narrate what this is out loud. Just make it up. build the connection. I mean, if you're writing poetry, you're busy doing that anyway, building that, a sense of it at least. You know, like prose is designed to connect everything. That's what prose does. It's taking you on a journey. Poetry is not doing that. We poets are not connecting for you. We're giving you corresponding ideas for the reader to put together. You have to bring your creativity to read poetry. It's up to the reader to build that bridge about how these things are connected. When I meet people who say they hate to read poetry, I don't say it out loud, but I think to myself, well, you're probably a lazy reader, you know? You just don't want to be bothered. You want to be fed a story. Fine, I have nothing against that. And fiction writers take all this, they're offended deeply when I talk about these things. I'm like, look, I'm just talking about the way things are processed in us. You can calm down, you know? I'm always asking fiction writers to calm down, it seems. So you're going to narrate this story, and then you're going to throw them again, and then you're going to sing about them. Singing is a very different way of communicating about things. Then you're going to throw them a third time. But the next time you walk alongside of them, you're walking alongside of them narrating. You're walking alongside of them singing. The third time you're walking alongside saying nothing, but you're touching the part of your body where you think each object belongs. Associate it physically onto yourself. Like yesterday at the reading when I said that I did that with the coyotes and the Mojave Desert, you know, like vigorously, you know, doing all these things to embody the creature. So that's the 9 objects. You might really like doing this one, and you can change the objects and sort of endless combinations with this one. Now, the next one is one of my favorites, haptics. Are you familiar with haptics? So this is one of the few that I borrow or glean from another poet. This poet's name is Stephen with a PH. Vincent. He's from the Bay Area, San Francisco. And I met him when I was doing a reading, I don't know, a decade and a half ago in San Francisco. I'm up on stage at the San Francisco Library, and he's in the front row, and he's got his notebook open and his pen in his fist like he's a child. It's fascinating what he's doing. I just couldn't believe what he was doing. And it was opened up, and it was held down by his navel. And he's looking at me the whole time. He's not looking down here. But it's important that you're going to hold the pen like this. If you hold your pen like this, you're immediately associating with writing. You got to put it in your fist, like you're a 4-year-old with a crayon. Have that down on the paper. Here's what he's doing. He's looking at me, and he's just making this drawing. He never looks down at it. And I was obsessed with him. It was like, wow, I'm like reading and obsessed with him at the same time. At the end, he photographs this drawing. He signs it and dates it, photographs it, puts that up on his website. Then he hands you the original. He's using his body. So the thing is about occult poetry. So like last year, I taught a seminar class called Occult Poetry. I believe that the main occult tool of the poet is our bodies. He was using his body as a seismograph machine, you know, that checks for earthquakes. He was reading my energy, like an oral reading of what I was doing on this. That's what this is. So what I'm going to ask you to do, there's a couple ways. If you want to collaborate with somebody, like I have my students doing this now, where they sit facing one another very close and stare into one another's eyes. When I try to do this over in Europe, it's sometimes like if I'm in a Scandinavian country, they're really into it. But if I'm in somewhere like London or Germany, they're like, we don't want to do this. They don't like it at all. But yeah, like in Norway, they're like, yeah, let's do it. You know, they're like all getting naked, going in this, jumping in icy water and stuff together. You know, they're into all that stuff. So you stare into one another's eyes, and then you begin making the drawing. And then you reach over with your finger, both of you simultaneously, and you begin drawing with your finger on their forehead that map. It's like a subconscious map. And then you write. But what I'm asking you to do privately is, it works especially well when you first wake up, is to go into the bathroom. Does everybody have a mirror in their bathroom? Yeah. Get as close, get as close as you can to the mirror. Have the notebook open. And down at your navel, your belly button, with the pen against the paper, ready to go. But you stare into your eyes. And do that staring for a few minutes. It's really daunting. It's weird. Some might think creepy. But I want you to look for your reflection of yourself in your eyeball. And once you've got that, lock into it and begin making the haptic. And then when you're done, you're going to take that drawing. I'm right-handed, so I'll hold it with my left hand. And I wet my finger, my index finger, with my right hand in the sink. And while I'm looking at it, I draw it on my forehead with water. I ask you to do that because the water is going to slowly evaporate while you're writing in your notebook. This is a residual haunting. You're going to feel that map slowly evaporate. So what I'm asking you to do is to look into your eyes, get this information that you're getting out of you and onto the page, and then put it back into you in a different location. Does that make sense? All of these rituals are just guidelines. Whatever you want to do whatever you want to do. I'm just telling you these are things that I've done that are effective. The only thing that matters is that you remain creative. Keeping the creative tools alive, you know. Reminding yourself continuously that you are a creative being, no matter what anybody tells you, no matter what you tell yourself even. I just recently celebrated my 40th anniversary of performing on stage. And in these 40 years, I've lost track of the number of people who've come up to me and said, I wish I could do that. And it's like, well, you can. And like, yeah, but you know, I was like, look, I'm just doing what I'm doing because I've been doing it for so long and it looks a certain way. That's all. You know what I mean? You can do it. Everybody can do it. Okay, braiding senses. I think I mentioned this briefly yesterday. I'm going to go over it again. But really, my main thing is to get you to do these and then make your own. You know, I told you earlier today about the ritual I did for Elizabeth Sowecki when her job was destroying her ability to write. If you have a terrible job, you need to start finding a way to write at that job. That job, those people that your bosses don't deserve, you're destroying your creativity, ever. I think I'm speaking to the best generation for this. I feel like, I don't know, my generation, like, I'm Generation X, like, we never even thought, like, I could just leave all this, you know, like, I can't tell you the number of students I've had in their early 20s that are like, yeah, I left my job today, I just walked out. I'm just like, I like this, you know, like, it's like they're all like got together. Everybody was like, well, you know what? Just leave your job if you don't like it. Just like walk out of McDonald's or wherever the hell you're at. I think that's refreshing. I think it's really great. Nothing's going to bring the end to this like oppressive system quicker than something like that. Not showing up. Braiding senses. Take a water pitcher or some container with water. Get a clear pint glass. and draw a black line in the middle of that glass. There's a very interesting sound in this room. Do you hear this pulsing? It's very strange, isn't it? I'm not bringing that up. It's like this is part of this ritual. So I'm going to get you to have your ear. I do it where I have it at the edge of the table, the glass. I put my ear down and my eyes. This is my bad ear that Neil Young destroyed. I don't want to get into it. But this ear is my better ear. So I put this ear down. And you're listening and watching. You pour to that line 3 times. Do that 3 times. 3 times is all you need to do to train your senses to then close your eyes and do it with your eyes closed. You'll hit that mark. It's kind of amazing. Pour at the same speed, and you'll hear it. Your ears will learn what volume that is, that line. The level. Your ears will remember the level. As soon as you've done that the 4th time, sit back in your chair immediately. Try to be seated all the way through this, because you want the muscles relaxed. You don't want anything you don't want anything else in your body to be interfered with while you're doing this. You sit back and just close your eyes, relax your arms on your legs, and just listen to all these weird sounds that you don't normally notice in the room around you. And then keep listening. Start noticing murmurs of things outside. And just when you think you've heard it all, just keep listening. Stay in there and just keep listening. And then start writing. This idea of tuning in like that with your ears, completely, it's like a refraction inside of you. Like you're trying to do something that you normally do with your eyes, and something you do with your ears, like it just sort of splinters the way you're thinking about how you're doing it. And it's a good splinter, because by the time you start writing those notes, they're going to be very different than... The thing is, I want you to notice the way the notes are different each time you do things. It's for you to see your genius about how you are building things, creating things. All right, banana walk. I want you to cut a banana lengthwise and put it in your sock, and then put your foot in the sock, and then put your foot. Well, then I also put like a plastic bag around that so I don't ruin my shoes with bananas. And then put your shoe on. And first of all, you're going to taste that banana coming through your feet. Your feet, do you ever do this? Like garlic, you rub garlic on your feet and you taste the garlic soon? Because there's all these remedies for like onions and garlic take down the inflammation. Walk around with these bananas. It's a very strange sensation. Yeah, that's it. Just walking with bananas. What's that? Both feet. Right, left, right, left, right, left. Banana, 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 banana. And write while you're out there walking around with your bananas. Go to the grocery store. What's that?
So bananas all the way down.
Bananas all the way down? Yeah, that's right. I like it. Color correspondence. This is the way I do this one. The first time I did this one was in Marfa, Texas. Again, when I did the other one, it's one of the 36 rituals a day for 36 days I'd mentioned, right? I go to the grocery store with my magnifying glass, and I find something discarded or whatever, something out there outside the grocery store, and I study it with my magnifying glass, looking for the color and things like that. Then you go inside the grocery store. Don't go to Whole Foods because they're all earth tones. It won't work. You want like a regular grocery store with like lots of crazy colors, you know. And you're going to go around the products and look for that color. You're looking for the intersections of temperature, all these things. Like color is all this like feelings of temperature and like altitude, like all these things inside of you. Like what is it making you feel? So for instance, I found this type of blue chewing gum that somebody spit out of their mouth on the parking lot. And I found that blue on a box of Lucky Charms. They have a blue half moon marshmallow. I bet it's the exact same blue food coloring they used for that gum. It's identical looking. You could even photograph it with your phone if you want and make sure it's right, but I don't like to do that because I want to be able to do that. Doesn't matter if it's exact anyway. There are a bunch of things I do in grocery stores that, you know, one of the things I did in a grocery store, I had to keep finding new grocery stores because they kept throwing me out, was I'd read tarot cards to the meat. Apparently you're not allowed to do that. Witchcraft with meat is bad, I guess. So, it's okay to murder these creatures and wrap them in plastic and have their corpse waiting in the morgue for you to pick up to take home and eat, but it's not okay to read tarot cards to it. I'm not even touching them. The other thing I wanted to do, but nobody would let me do it, was that the weight of tuna is, they're massive creatures, you know, and they're on the verge of being wiped out. Dr. Sylvia Earle, who I mentioned earlier, Dr. Sylvia Earle talks about this continuously. That last talk I went to with that bioluminescence quote, there was this older man in the audience. The place was packed. All these National Geographic people, you know. What do you think we should do to help, you know, save the oceans? She said, you need to stop eating fish, sir. He said, what? She said, you need to stop eating fish. And then they all started leaving. They were so mad, they just started leaving. Whatever. But she started talking about the tuna. And she claims that we've lost 90% of the tuna at this point. 90% of the tuna. And then she showed us a photograph. This is Dr. Sylvia Earle again. She showed us a photograph of these giant boats that Mitsubishi, I never pronounced that, Mitsubishi car company. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi.
There you go.
Thank you. Mitsubishi created these tuna boats to go out and literally drive the tuna into extinction. I forget which bluefin, yellowfin, I don't know. There's one of these that's really close to being extinct right now that they love people love to have in sushi. And they built, it's like an aircraft hangar that they've turned into a freezer, and they're stacking the bodies of these these fish are bigger than this table, you know, waiting for them to become extinct so that each fish can be sold for $1 million. This is the kind of thing that's going on the planet right now. Everywhere, you know. United States is much worse. You know, I'm not picking on Japan. I'm just saying this happens to be happening in Japan. The United States is 10 times worse as far as I'm concerned. Why did I talk about that? There's a reason. Oh, because I wanted to convince one of these grocery stores to let me take the weight of a tuna and to stack the cans of tuna up as like the body of this tuna. Then I was kind of wanting to like work with, I have friends who do like I don't know what they're doing. They work in a laboratory. But I was like to see if any of these cans of tuna are related, like if they're from the same fish, you know, these DNA samples. But anyway, no, but they're like, no, we're not going to have, you know, of course they're not. But you keep asking, you never know. Someday somebody might say, sure. And then you find yourself on your knees in the grocery store with cans. It's going to happen one day. Okay, color correspondence. That's your grocery store ritual. Grocery stores are endless. There's so many things to do in the grocery store to write poems. It's just like you can never run out of it, you know? Okay. I'm going to go through these last two, and then the rest of the time, I just, whatever questions you have. Crystal dream therapy. So, the quartz crystal technology, like piezoelectricity, all these studies in quartz crystal used in our phones, computers, they're used in these objects because they have a very consistent current. They're the most consistent current on the planet. But I think we utilize just a fraction of their properties in industry and science. I think they have much bigger jobs that they could do. If you're not opposed to drinking bottled water, let me tell you the way I want to do it before I get into that. You get a clear quartz crystal. The first thing I would like you to do is to pour some sea salt on a plate and put that crystal on top of that dry salt overnight to clean out all the energy that's in it. Then flush that in the toilet, away with the toilet in the morning. Then you're going to wash it up with whatever hippie soap you have, Dr. Bronner's, whatever, and put it in a container and fill that container up with filtered water, distilled water, because you want to get all those heavy metals out of the water. They will interfere with this process, those heavy metals that you can't see. I have what's called a zero water filter. Have you heard of these, the zero water filters? They're the best. This is a Brita filter water bottle. It took us, how many years did it take us to figure out we can actually filter the water in a water bottle, a long time. Zero water is much better. Have you ever drunk water from zero water? Did you ever have zero water? It's incredible, isn't it? It's like you can't believe how it tastes. You can see through the glass in a way that it looks like there's no water, because you don't realize that how much pollution is in the water that you can see the water. With zero water, you can't see it. It's just the water. It's so clean. So get your clean water in that container. So, basically the next morning you're going to wash that crystal, put it in the container, fill it up with water, and then just put it next to your bed. I'm asking you, think of a pint glass of water. A pint, clear, has to be clear glass. Trust me, I've used many different, but plastic, none of that works. Metal especially doesn't work. When you go to bed at night, that water has been filled with the vibration of that crystal all day long. It's just been speaking to it. Those water molecules are now infused with this current. It's become the energy of that. Water will do that. Oh, what is his name? Emoto? This amazing Japanese artist who would freeze. He would take water pitchers and he would write words like ugly, disgusting, and then another one like beautiful, lovely. And then he would freeze those samples of water and he would do microscopic views of them, and they look like snowflakes. But the ones with the words like ugly, they're all broken. They're never anything but broken. The ones with the words beautiful and love, they're perfect geometric snowflakes. They're beautiful. It's very interesting. Water is fascinating, endlessly. So when you go to bed, you're going to sit at the edge of your bed, and you're going to stare down at the surface of the water, and you're going to say, it's really important to say all these, say it like this. Please help me remember my dreams when I wake up. Thank you. Then you're going to drink half the glass of water. You drink only half the glass. You put the remaining half on your nightstand near your head and go to sleep. You have that. When you wake up, you repeat that sentence. Please help me. Well, you don't say when I wake up because you woke up. So you say, please help me remember my dreams. You drink the remaining half glass of water. Your notebook should be waiting for you right there. Just start writing. Thing is, your dreams will come to you like this. If you didn't remember your dream, you're going to remember your dream. If you only remember parts of your dream, you're going to remember the missing parts of your dream. My theory about why this works, which of course could be wrong, but I think it might be accurate in some way at least, is that half glass of water left behind, it's not helping you remember, it is the memory. This is a backup file. That water you drank is in your system. It's on a current that this water also has. They're speaking to one another. The current's not broken because of the crystal. So it's infusing this water with everything you're seeing in your dreams. This is a backup file. If you want to do it immediately tonight without cleaning the crystal, buy Fiji water. Fiji water has the highest silica. If you look at like these expensive, ridiculous, expensive artisan blah, blah, blah waters, if you look at the label, you'll see the word silica in the mineral content. That's crystal. Fiji water goes through 3.5 miles of quartz crystal channels before it hits the surface. That's why it is coveted. It just makes you feel good, and it's viscous. It's so thick, that water. You taste the crystal is like on your tongue. If you do this with Fiji water tonight, you won't need it needs to be room temperature. You don't want it to be cold. Cold slows things down. It's got to be clear glass because it's got to penetrate through that surface for this to happen. Evian water has silica, but Fiji is twice as much. The highest silica content on the planet that we know of is in a small town that I have tried to visit and see this water again, called Paradise, Idaho. There are, you know how sometimes you come across a piece of information and it comes again, unexpectedly in another way? I was reading a book that you might want to write down. It's an incredible book. The editor, I would call him the editor of the book, is Frank B. Linderman. He's a German journalist from the beginning of the 20th century. His goal was to speak to Native Americans who were alive before white people were seen in their area, and then they're all on reservations at this point. So it's like, and of course he had to find elderly people, and he chose the Crow because they were far away. They were like really far away. Like the East Coast, it was impossible. They'd already been. It just wasn't possible. So he goes with the Crow, and this is called. The book is called Pretty Shield, Medicine Woman of the Crow. So I bring this book up. She's incredible, by the way. He did the other book with the chief, Plenty Coup. I like that book, but he wanted to talk about war all the time and, fighting. She was not. She was talking about magical things. Real. She's talking and they're like, before white people came, I was speaking to these little beings around the plants. These light beings, and they would talk to me about, now they're not around anymore. And at one point he asked her, what is the one thing that white people have brought into your community that you hate the most, or something like that? He didn't ask it like that. It was something, I'm paraphrasing. And she didn't hesitate. She's like, your church. She's like, your church has made my people soft as mud. She said, when I was a child, we would walk through the snow, following the buffalo. And one time I fell into the water and was submerged in the water. And my parents dragged me out. They made me get naked and roll in the snow and put my clothing back on and remember what I was like before I went in the water. She said, that's how I survived. She says, but you brought us this leader who's on a cross. He's this martyr. And everybody complains now. She's like, there was no complaining back then. You just did what you needed to do. To get things going. So now they're just soft and muddy and like nothing makes sense to anybody anymore. But I bring her up because of this water in Paradise, Idaho. It used to be sold in the grocery store, like Whole Foods, called Trinity. It has the Germans, who are very picky about water, gave it the highest whatever marks. They got 5 stars, I guess. And it has the highest amount of silica. And the owner, who I got to speak with years and years and years ago, who bought this, he was a geologist from D.C. working, I don't know what he was doing, probably mineral hunting for, who knows what, fracking or something, they want all that. But he found this water source in Idaho. He bought the land, and he started bottling this water, and he was able to bypass all of the pasteurization and all that because it's it's the deepest aquifer on the planet. That water, that Trinity water, is the only source of water on this planet that has 0 gasoline traces, plutonium. All the other water we're drinking has minute traces of all this pollution. Trinity has none because it's so deep. And it's on if you can imagine this, a 16,000-year cycle before it hits the surface. I don't even know what that means. And that's why it's so pure. Even Fiji and Evian, like the poet Gertrude Stein used to go to the Evian Springs to bathe because it's filled with crystal and it's like a healing spa. Trinity is overwhelming. But now when you go there, because they stopped selling it. Turns out these billionaires bought the land from him. There's razor wire and there's armed guards around. I went to Boise, Idaho to do some teaching and stuff. And I asked the students about this, like, well, I used to be able to get this water. And they're like, you're never going to get it again. So these billionaires are stockpiling the water for themselves, maybe. I don't know what they're doing. But it's beyond our reach now. Blue is the new gold. Okay. Crystal dream therapy, you got all that. The last one. I want you to get your phone. You know how to, record yourself on your phone. Bring binoculars, bring a magnifying glass. If you don't have those, just use your eyes. Go on a walk. I want you to stop 3 times on this walk. Each time you stop, you're going to start your phone narrating. Oh. And you're just going to do a 360 very slowly, like your King radar, just going around, and you're narrating into your phone what you're seeing. Perfunctory, very, matter of fact, like there is a black cat in this corner of this house, there's a blue door, somebody's playing Lady Gaga as they're driving. Whatever's seeing, hearing, whatever's going on. Go about your business. Go back to your walk. Now, while you're on your walk, you're going to find one object that you're going to get out with a magnifying glass and really look at. And you're going to narrate that as well, like chewing gum wrapper, double mint, looks like it's been here a month, there's mud on it, the spider's been here, whatever you can see, the spider's living underneath it. Then when you go home, in the evening, you're going to get in the darkest room you have, or in a closet, and sit there. You have a candle for later when you're writing. But you're going to sit there with no lights, with your eyes closed, just comfortably breathing while listening to this recording. And listening to the recording is going to transport you back into seeing all these things. And then you begin writing. You can write while you're walking as well, write wherever you want in this. But I think the real writing is when you're not on the walk anymore. So these are 13 rituals for the 13 moons. Because we don't have 12 moons a year. We've got 13. There's always a blue moon. Because there's 2 moons in a month. There's 2 moons in a month because there are not 12 moons. There are 13 moons a year. There should be 13 months, not 12 months. The lunar calendar is the more accurate calendar to live by. But when you write a check, if you put the lunar date, I don't think anybody's going to cash it. So, I mean, my theory about that is that this is the workings of the church, monotheism. You know, it's like saying, you know how 13 becomes unlucky? Why? Because there's 13 moons a year, and the covens of witches in Europe had 13 witches. Each witch was in charge of one of the moons in the coven. You know, 13 is very powerful. It's very meaningful. It's been used for centuries. Then it becomes like, you know, Ixnay and the 13. They make it very superstitious, so you stay away from this power. It's sort of like where the word faggot comes from, you know. And do you know where the word faggot comes from? The Inquisition. Like they believed that the witch's body, the flesh of the witches couldn't burn by faggots. You know, faggots are sticks alone. So they would stick because the thing is, all these witches, like the real witches, had these gay men following these women around to be like gathering the roots and the herbs and stuff. The term fag hag comes out of that because, you know, she's hanging around these gay men, these women. But the men became synonymous with the because they would put the gay men in amongst the sticks and burn the gay men because they believed that the witch couldn't burn by the sticks alone. They believed they were lighting the gay men on fire to light the witches on fire. Anyway, lots of horrible things that we could continue talking about. But the thing is, I believe that you can make your entire day an opportunity for writing poems. Walking to the bank is an opportunity. To live in the process of poetry is not as difficult as you think it is. And once you start centering yourself in that, it enriches everything. Here's something that I learned from doing these rituals every day. Well, I have very long hair, but I keep it up. And I stopped cutting my hair. So I was very involved with the anti-war movement to try to not, you know, invade Afghanistan and then to try to invade Iraq. And then it was like all bets were off, and now we're suddenly in 7 wars. You know, we're still at war. When I hear these reporters talking about, like, you know, peacetime, like where, you know, where are we at peace? We're not at peace. We're still in Iraq. I've got cousins who were serving in the military at the beginning of the Iraq occupation, and now their kids are there. You know, same with Afghanistan. Complete, total annihilation, you know, just constantly out there. So I stopped cutting my hair because I was trying to find a way, because, you know, once the anti-war movement absolutely stopped, there is no anti-war movement anymore. There was for a while. It was exciting. It didn't do any good, obviously. Things are worse than they've ever been with weapons. But you got to be with people, at least, you know, who were like-minded, so you didn't feel so dismal. But the thing about that that's really amazing is that, well, never mind. I don't want to keep focusing on this stuff with the wars. But anyway, let me just ask if anybody has any questions. I don't want to be harping on these things. Does anybody have any questions?
I do have one. You remember that poem with the Frank and the butterfly wondering about her caterpillar friends? Can you tell me what it said? Because I wanted to write it down and send it to a friend.
Oh, yeah. Frank wonders about a caterpillar. Oh, no. Frank knows a butterfly who wonders about her old caterpillar friends.
Who wonders about her old caterpillar friends.
Yeah.
That is really good. I see why they got a tattoo of it.
Thank you. Okay. How's that feel? Anybody have any questions about Rich? Because what I want you to do, yes.
So for the lines in the home, I was taking notes, but all I have in here is just right against the lines on the paper, but no offense. I think there was more to that.
Oh, for the lines in the home?
Yeah, I started drawing lines in the room as you were talking.
Oh, yeah. Well, then you want to, before you go to sleep, like draw them with your finger on your body, like hold up and look at it, and then let that incorporate in your dreams, or write again while you're doing it, and then try to get pieces of paper and draw curved lines and tape them around the house. Just sort of break all that up and see how that gets going, and just experiment with that. See if you can get out of those violent straight lines. It's amazing how many straight lines we're surrounded by.
I was surprised as I started drawing this and realizing there's so many lines where it's just encircling you and you were the only thing that wasn't.
Yeah, we're surrounded by them, everything. It's just cost effective, it's efficient. I believe efficiency breeds brutality. That's what I believe very strongly. The more efficient, the more brutal. That's why I like this younger generation. It's like, I don't think I'm going to work here anymore, and they just don't show up, or they leave in the middle of a shift. It's like, I'm out of here. You know, I'm not staying here anymore. I'm going to live. Ah, that's nice. Any other questions? Yes.
I do a lot of creative exercises with my students, but they are very resistant and really don't want to do it. And so have you found a number of how many times you sort of introduce it to where they start to feel a little more comfortable doing that? Or have you found this in any classes that you've taught?
Well, I think if you're working with students who are younger and resistant to this, like in an art class, is to look at what they like first and build it inside of that and then work out. Because when I'm asking, because like when people are as young, you know, when younger, it's like there's not often something that they don't like that they don't want to work on. They're not even interested. But when you're an adult and there's like something you got to do, but you don't want to do it, but you have to do it, that's where I want you to write, you know, as an adult. But when it comes to kids that get them involved in this, I would look at the things that they love and build it on that. You could build it on anything. If there's a type of food they like to eat, build it on that. If they like oranges, bring an orange in and like set it down and be like, you know, every orange has that little belly button thing, and just do a whole ritual with them, like that orange, like imagine them growing something out of that belly, like just completely morphing the orange in their imagination, and then drawing or writing or using sculpting, collage, whatever they could do, like to associate their feelings with that orange, you know. An orange is nice too because you scratch a little bit with your fingernails and pass it around and you can smell it, you know, and of course then you can eat it. Food's good. Well, yeah, because they're not, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Going a little bit off of what Rachel was asking, how do you introduce these exercises to a group of students? You know, maybe like the ones you were talking about earlier, who might not be used to this and might be resistant.
Yeah.
To this. How do you introduce what you're about ready to?
Well, the students at the Art Institute in Amsterdam, where I teach every year, I know that there's going to be some of them who are interested, but there are going to be a certain number of them they're just like, oh, God. It's usually the ones that arrive a few minutes late or 10 minutes late. I know they're the ones who are like, oh, why do I have to be here to speak to this poet, you know? And I just start talking about what I've done and how it's changed. And then I start saying to them, I say, I'm going to be here all week working with you. By the end of this week, each one of you is going to have a personalized ritual. Now, the way I used to do this is I used to meet with people individually and build them. But not only is that exhausting, it's just not as effective. So what I do is I say, and I'm doing this semester with all of my students. There's at the end, we take the last half hour of each class workshop, and we collectively focus on one person. Like recently, we had a student who I asked him. I said, and it's funny because he's like one of these students who like looks really together, and like everybody thinks he's like what you would call traditionally handsome and sharp dresser, and like everything seems to go together. And when I asked him to tell us, because I say, what's going on in your life that you want us to focus on? Is there something that's troubling you that you might want to write inside of? And he said, to everybody's surprise, when I wake up in the morning, I'm so full of anxiety that I can't get out of bed. I'm just filled with dread. I don't know how to get out of bed. And so we built a ritual around him getting out of bed. And then that was 2 weeks ago. And this last week, he was like, it's working. You know, the ritual's working. I'm like being able to we all working to get him out of bed. and to deal with the anxiety. He's the one doing the TRE, the trauma release exercise. And I also got him to get rose quartz crystals, 9 of them, and smooth ones, and clean them up with the sea salt, and then wash them with hippie soap, and then put them in his water bottle, because rose quartz opens up your heart chakra. But I warned him that it was going to be a real... one year at Naropa, I did a rose quartz week of rituals, and I tried to warn everybody. I was like, everybody's like, oh, we love rose quartz. That's why we signed up. I was like, yeah, it's nice, but Asheville, North Carolina, where I spent a lot of time fighting that HP2 law, that's the only city in the United States that the entire bedrock of the city is rose quartz. That's where all the New Age people move down there. It's a beacon for them. But I've never lived it. I didn't really live there. I was going there on and off to do this stuff. I've never been anywhere in this country where there's so much Section 8 housing, because people do this thing with. I met this woman who said, she's from Arizona, Tempe, Arizona. She's like, yeah, my kids were grown and I hated my husband, and I woke up and I had this dream of this map, and I drew the map, and I got in my car and I withdrew enough money from the bank and left the rest to him, and I just left a note saying, don't ever speak to me again, and I followed the map, and it was here, Asheville. I've been here for 25 years after following that map. That's the kind of people you meet down there, you know? And they get there and they're all excited, but they're not dealing with the fact that this rose quartz is coming up through their bodies and a pulse continuously. And if you're not working on your issues, you're going to implode. And people have nervous breakdowns in that city. I've seen so many nervous breakdowns. And rose quartz water, I told them, I was like, look, I'm telling you, the second day of that workshop at Naropa, people were crying. It was terrible. I was like, look, just hang in there. You got to keep doing it. You're going to clear that away. And then they were all like excited by the 3rd, 4th day. I used to do this thing. You might want to try this in a group. I think we're over COVID enough that we could do this. I haven't been doing it for a long time. Okay, let me tell you where it originally started. I originally called this the human hibernaculum. And the human hibernaculum was where the first time I did this was in San Francisco, and it was a public workshop, and about half of the students were all dancers. Dancers love my workshops. The thing is about dancers is they're very in tune with their bodies. So the idea is that everybody gets to be a writer. So your job when it's your time to be the writer is to just sit in the chair and write. Then I have all the other people surround the writer, and they put one hand and they stack their hands on top of the writer's head. And then I get them to hum a very deep om, deep chanting om, down through the hands into the head of the writer. Now, when I've done this before, when I'm with friends, like it seemed to be generative, but with this workshop, one of the dancers just projectile vomited immediately. The workshop was over, you know. And I was like, well, you know, I can't have that going on. That's not good for a workshop. So I kept modifying this thing. So here's what it comes down to now. It's called suspension writing. And what it is, like if you've got 20 people in a workshop, it's a perfect number. You take this big area where you have 4 groups of 5. And so in your group of 5, you get to be, you know, whoever's the writer first, you've got your notebook, and then the other 4 people are standing behind you, holding your back. Then I ask the writer to lean back, and then I ask the writer to bend their knees so they can't stand up without these people. You're literally being held while you're writing. The other thing I ask is that everybody gathers we usually do this toward the end of the workshop. You've got all these notes. You choose one line from your notes that you can memorize. And I ask them, I time it. I look at my phone, and I'm like, for 30 seconds, I time it. I was like, please whisper your lines. So they're whispering these lines. The writer is just being, the way I have it set up, it's like 4 so that the writers are facing one another. So there's this blank space in the middle. Does that make sense? So that means that all the sound is coming into the middle. It's like a vortex of the sound. and then 30 seconds of whispering, 30 seconds of speaking the lines, and then 3 minutes of singing. And then 30 seconds of speaking, 30 seconds of whispering, and then you switch. And then you go through the whole, so everybody has done this, been a writer. It's very exhausting, so that's why I save it for the end. Nobody wants to do anything after that, but they love it. How's that? Does anybody else have a question or anything? Oh, yeah, no.
We're good. No, I was just gonna say, James is selling books. He's gonna have to get out of here, what, by 2?
Yeah.
So anyway,
If anybody wants to buy books. Thank you for selling books again.
yeah, it's a good opportunity, and I'm sure to be able to have them sign them for you.
Okay. Well,
All right, thank you.
go.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you for having me.